ever thought about who our great so many greats ago grandparents might be? Us Homo sapiens. That's Latin for wise men, by the way. Might like to think of ourselves as the headliners in the human evolution concert, but truth be told, we're actually the 9th act to take the stage. Our predecessors, 8 other species of humans, lived long before we stepped in. Some of these people had a longer time here on the planet than we've managed so far, even though we're the ones who usually take the historical spotlight. So, care for a family reunion? Let me introduce you to the relatives you never knew you had. Most scientists concur that around 6 million years ago, a group of primates took a bold evolutionary leap and started to walk on 2 legs, inaugurating the Homo genus. They traded their ape-like long arms for sturdy legs and started exploring new horizons beyond the forests. They weren't tree swingers anymore, they were upright walkers. As time went by, their brains grew and they became skilled hunters, masters of fire, and builders of shelters. They even began expressing themselves through symbolic acts. By the time Homo sapiens emerged about 300,000 years ago, we were the 9th species of the Homo genus. Prior to us, several other varieties of humans thrived. Prepare yourself for a bit of a tongue twister. Homo habilis, Erectus, Rudolfensis, Heidelbergensis, Floriensis, Neanderthalensis, Naledi, and Luzonensis. Now that we've established who's who, let's delve into the fascinating histories and lifestyles of our ancestral species. First off, let's talk about Homo habilis, or the handyman. Between 2.4 and 1.4 million years ago is when these resourceful creatures walked the Earth. Scientists, upon uncovering fossilized remains of these early humans in Tanzania, noticed that they had slightly more substantial brains than apes. Additionally, when they unearthed thousands of stone tools in close proximity, they agreed that these humans were particularly good at tool crafting, earning them the handyman nickname. Despite their nature, one considerably shorter and their weight less than the average modern human, they managed to hunt animals with stone tools, indicating complex thinking. Following them, the Homo erectus group were the first to attain fully upright postures. Hence the name erectus, which means upright person. Their arms were shorter when compared to their bodies and their legs longer, a physique optimized for walking and running rather than tree climbing. These individuals had a larger brain than apes, but smaller teeth. The remnants of campfires and fireplaces that scientists have uncovered suggest that these humans were likely the first to cook their food. This practice, especially when talking about meat, enabled them to grow taller and develop larger brains. These humans existed for almost 9 times longer than our current state, by the way. Our subsequent ancestor, Homo rudolfensis, was here between 1.9 and 1.8 million years ago. Sadly, we don't know much about them. They were unearthed near Lake Rudolph, now Lake Turkana, in Kenya, and possessed a larger head than Homo habilis. However, some scientists believe that they might bear a closer relationship to a different primate species, given their smaller stature. Homo heidelbergensis were small, broad humans, believed to be the first to occupy colder climates. Scientists believe that these early humans hunted big animals like horses, elephants, hippos, and rhinos using spears. They also mastered the control of fire and the construction of basic shelters from wood and stone to keep them warm. It's widely accepted that the African lineage of Homo heidelbergensis eventually led to the emergence of our species, Homo sapiens. Next, meet Homo floresiensis, affectionately known as the Hobbit, due to its diminutive stature. These petite humans inhabited the Indonesian island of Flores. Scientists have discovered remains of dwarf elephants and Komodo dragons alongside these humans, implying an island existence filled with distinctive traits and adaptations. Then we have Homo neanderthalensis, or the Neanderthals, our nearest relatives. These humans, last sighted on Earth around 40,000 years ago, were shorter and more robust than us, but had brains as large, if not larger. In harsh, chilly conditions, Neanderthals were skilled at igniting fires, building elaborate shelters, and fashioning clothes using intricate tools, like bone needles. Neanderthals also used to bury those that had passed, which shows they had symbolic thoughts and a sophisticated culture. It might even suggest they had some sort of language skills. Homo naledi, a species discovered recently, survived until about 236,000 years ago. Despite numerous fossil samples being available, we know very little about Homo naledi, including their exact size or lifestyle, as no tools or other animals were found alongside the fossils. Finally, we have Homo luzonensis, discovered in 2019 in a confined cave on an island in northern Indonesia. This finding reopened discussions about how these early humans reached such distant islands and whether Homo luzonensis is a distinct species or a variant of Homo floresiensis. As we navigated our ancestral tree, we can clearly see that not all of these human species cohabitated with us. Some, like the Neanderthals, did cross paths with modern humans, and perhaps not always amicably. It's believed that as Homo sapiens migrated into Europe, the Neanderthal population started to decline. We might have been rivals for resources, and sadly, for the Neanderthals, we eventually won. Another theory for the disappearance of the Neanderthals links their demise to changes in their climate. Homo sapiens may have simply been better at adapting to harsher conditions. That's not to say we didn't have some interactions with these distant relatives. Scientists have detected Neanderthal DNA within our own genetic material, indicating that crossbreeding between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals happened. The evolution of the human species is an amazing canvas of experimentation and failure, triumph and extinction. While we Homo sapiens may feel pretty good about our accomplishments, we should acknowledge the extensive work of our ancestors who played a part in molding us into the beings we are today. We may never truly know why we're the only surviving human species on Earth. Sure, we can romanticize. We can believe it's because we have the ability to enjoy music, invent calculus, and produce art. The fact that we can engage in complex language must have been helpful too. This puzzle leads us down an even trickier path. Since we can't pin down what exactly being a Homo sapien means, are we really that special? Also, it's important to remember that we're not at the inevitable top of human evolution. Sure, we're one species among many humans, but hey, we eventually overtook all others. But can't you picture a different evolutionary journey? Try to imagine what series of genetic mutations and historical occurrences would have led Neanderthal scientists to study our peculiar, round skulls, trying to decipher our level of humanness. See, evolution is a messy business. Species morph gradually into others, and every member of a species has their own little quirks. That's what makes evolution possible. But here's the twist. We're both uniquely different and strikingly similar to other animals thanks to evolution's game of chance. Our shared ancestry links us to the animal kingdom, yet our differences make us uniquely human. Even among ourselves, we're a blend of sameness and difference. Sure, we share a common thread with all Homo sapiens. Yet, what makes each human special comes with the unique mix of genes passed down from our families, and even from other types of humans like the Neanderthals. Now, don't get me wrong, we humans are not that varied in some aspects. Homo sapiens have less genetic diversity than, say, bacteria, and our bodies don't have as many different shapes as fish, berries, or dogs do. However, when it comes to our behavior, we're as diverse as it gets. We wear many hats: doctors, mathematicians, actors, teachers, outlaws, singers, you name it. There are countless ways to exist, and each of us has the personal journey of figuring out our own vision of what it means to be human. Guessing what's next for us humans is equally as tricky, but hey, we can make some smart bets. Oddly enough, our best chance at finding answers is by looking at the historical human species. We could grow taller, live longer, be leaner, and get along better, but with tinier brains.
Good day, Brightsiders. My name is Tom, and today let's pretend it's year 2003. The place? Indonesia. island of Flores. A group of scientists found a mysterious cave in the green jungle. They went inside and discovered some primitive tools like sharpened stones. The researchers understood that this place was home to our distant ancestors hundreds of thousands of years ago. But then they found a very unusual skeleton. A careful analysis showed that it was the skeleton of a 30-year-old woman. Her height was only 3.5 feet. It's just about the waist of a grown-up person. That day, scientists discovered an unknown human ancestor. They called this species Homo floresiensis, or simply the hobbit. More and more scientists arrived at the cave and carried out detailed excavations. The archaeologists found the remains of 8 more little people. It seemed that hundreds, thousands of years ago, there was an entire species of hobbits. Also, the scientists discovered the remains of some amazing creatures. It turned out that the cave was a real fantasy world in the distant past. For example, the researchers found skeletons of huge storks the size of pterodactyls. The hobbits seemed tiny compared to these birds. The scientists also discovered the remains of what seemed to be a relative of the modern elephant. The creature was the size of a cat. But the most astonishing discovery was the ancient Komodo dragon. The bone analysis showed that all these creatures were not the owners of the cave. More than 80% of the identifiable bones belonged to giant rats. Hundreds and thousands of rats the size of cats inhabited the place. It's possible that a real battle once occurred between them and the hobbits. Just imagine a world where the hobbits and small elephants run away from hordes of huge rats and hide in a cave. And massive storks are watching the events unfolding in front of their eyes. Anyway, the analysis of the remains showed that Homo floresiensis was a different species from modern humans. For example, the researchers analyzed the hobbit's wrist bone and found out that these bones resembled those of monkeys, not those of modern humans. The hobbits' heads had a flat, sloping forehead and a short face, and their teeth and jaws resembled those of Australopithecus. But then, the scientists uploaded all the data from the skull they found into a computer program to create a 3-dimensional image of the hobbit's face. And the computer showed the head of a woman who looked much more like a modern human than like a monkey. But the same skull analysis also showed that the hobbit's brain was about 3 times as small as that of the average modern person. This suggests that their mental abilities were probably not very well developed. The analysis of the bones and tools showed that Homo floresiensis could have lived between 190,000 and 50,000 years ago. It's even possible they lived next to the ancestors of modern people. To find out exactly who the hobbits were and what branch of human evolution they belonged to, scientists started a large-scale investigation. A race of pygmies lived not far from the cave. Scientists have found a great similarity in the facial proportions of the hobbits and the pygmies. This tribe could be the direct descendants of the discovered species. The pygmies themselves claimed it was true. They brought food and flowers to the cave as a sign of respect to their ancestors. But to know for sure, scientists needed to do a genetic test. They hired 2 translators, from English to Indonesian, and from Indonesian to the Pygmy language. The researchers explained to the tribe what they wanted to do, and the Pygmies agreed. They showed sincere enthusiasm because they were also very interested in their history. The scientists took saliva samples from 32 volunteers. All they had to do was compare them with the DNA of the hobbits. But that's where a serious problem arose. Extracting DNA from such ancient remains turned out to be an impossible task. That's why the scientists decided to compare the DNA of the pygmies with the DNA of other people from nearby islands and countries. They studied the DNA of 500 modern people from 225 populations in East Asia, Malaysia, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, and other countries. The researchers wanted to find matches and differences between the pygmies' DNA and the DNA of the surrounding tribes. They also analyzed the history of the people from these areas and their migration patterns. When the investigation was over, the scientists had to admit they hadn't found any evidence that the pygmies had descended from the ancient hobbits. Homo floresiensis is likely a totally separate species, and its role in the development of modern humans is still unknown. The hobbit's height can be explained by such a phenomenon as insular dwarfism. Unique ecosystems appear on small and remote islands. There are often lots of food sources there, as well as there is a higher chance of survival thanks to the absence of dangerous animals. The climate contributes to development of an unusual ecosystem too. In such conditions, many living creatures become smaller. It happened to little hippos in Madagascar, and small elephants lived on the island of Flores. But sometimes, such ecosystems can create huge animals, just like it happened with the rats and the storks. By the way, gigantic rats still live on the island. In the modern world, there's an unusual village inhabited by dwarfs. There are many small houses there made of clay and stone that resemble little castles. In the streets you can find statues of fairies, large butterflies, and silver balls. The locals wear strange costumes: knight's armor, princess dresses, green tunics, and yellow cloaks. At the main square, dwarfs fight with swords, dance, and sing songs. But there's no magic here. You're in the Dwarf Empire, and before you get inside, you have to pay a $50 entry fee. More than 10 years ago, a Chinese businessman met several dwarfs. They told him about the difficulties they've come across in the modern world. The businessman felt sympathy for these people and decided to invest $14 million in creating a themed town inhabited by dwarves. So in 2009, the World Eco Garden of Butterflies and the Dwarf Empire was born. About 100 people live in this place. Their height doesn't exceed 4.5 feet, and they're all younger than 50 years old. Every day, this place attracts hundreds of tourists. Thanks to this, dwarves have jobs and all the conditions for a good life. All employees of the village get a salary of several $100s per month, and they are also provided with free housing and free food. Many little people who have nowhere to go come to this place and find a new home and a new family. By the way, there's another village inhabited by dwarves in China. In Yangtze village, about 40% of all residents are born to be half the height of ordinary people, and no one knows exactly why this happens. Some believe the reason is the high content of mercury in the soil and the presence of toxic gases in the air. There's also a legend that says that once upon a time, a resident of this village caught a black turtle with unusually long legs. He decided to eat this creature, and because of this, the turtle cursed the village. Currently, the number of little people living there is decreasing, and new generations have regular height. Unfortunately, it's difficult to study this phenomenon because the place is closed to press and to visitors. 100 years ago, a small Iranian village existed, with its inhabitants no taller than 3 feet. And long before that, the inhabitants' height could reach 10 inches. This place is 1,500 years old and is considered the birthplace of dwarves. The short stature of people who lived there is associated with poor nutrition. The climate in the region is hot and dry, hence it was impossible to grow crops or breed cattle there. Mostly, they ate turnips and barley. The inhabitants of the village never tasted meat. Only in the 20th century, when roads were built and cars became available, it became possible to bring better food there. Now, about 700 people live in the village and they are all of average height. But small houses made of stone and clay are the proof that dwarves lived there. Such houses are easier to build and heat, but the most important thing is they were invisible to foreign conquerors. The residents hoped that the unique architecture of the place might one day attract more tourists. Thank you for watching. My name is Tom, and see you in the next video where we continue to learn every day together with Brightside. Bye.
One iced frappuccino for me, please, and with a double shot. Now, I suspect this is something you'd never hear if you traveled 100,000 years ago to check out on your super great-great-great-grandparents. First off, you wouldn't hear anything resembling human speech for a simple reason. The early humans developed a capacity for language about 50,000 years ago. So, to talk to your ancestors, you'd need to use some of the oldest forms of human communication, including talking or making sounds, drawing or painting, dancing, acting, and using symbols. For example, if you made some weird noises like grunts or guttural sounds, it would mean you're trying to communicate with your peeps or warn them about something. Another reason why no one would grab iced frappuccino back then is that 100,000 years ago, Earth was going through a serious ice age. Who wants an icy, refreshing drink in the middle of winter? It wasn't quite a full-blown glacial period, but it was definitely way colder than it is now. The sea levels were low and there were glaciers everywhere, which made it super tough for our early human ancestors to get around. Some even kicked the bucket while trying to migrate to other areas, especially up in Northern America and Europe. Back in the day, when humans were still figuring out this whole survival thing, they chowed down on some pretty, fancy stuff. We're talking tartar steak, sashimi, you name it. Okay, I'm exaggerating a bit. It wasn't an iconic fresh dish, but raw meat. Not a Japanese cuisine staple, but a plain fish. There weren't Michelin restaurants serving fancy dishes and Gordon Ramsay recipes, but prehistoric foodies happily munched on nuts, seeds, and berries. And you know what? Their lifestyle is gaining popularity today. And there's even a so-called paleo diet. Paleo stands for the Paleolithic period. The idea is all about eating like our early human ancestors did. Some scientists believe that our genes haven't quite caught up to the modern diet that came from farming. Thanks to farming, we've got grains, legumes, and dairy galore. But it turns out that these changes in our diet happen faster than our bodies could keep up with it. 100,000 years ago, humans roaming around were basically just like us in terms of looks and DNA, but their houses were far from being modern. Actually, those were just caves. They couldn't even buy a mere bed in IKEA. Scientists in South Africa just discovered what they're calling the world's oldest bed. And no, it's not a fancy mattress with adjustable firmness settings. It's actually made of grass. Archaeologists stumbled upon mats of grass and sedge that were stacked half an inch thick on the floor of a rock shelter. And get this, the bedding is 77,000 years old. That's like 40,000 years older than the previous record holder. The mats were covered with leaves from a tree called the river wild quince, which repels pesky insects. These prehistoric folks were basically having a bed and breakfast situation going on in their cave. But let's be real, living in a cave is pretty gross. Insects, rot, and lice are just a few of the issues. But instead of bouncing to a new spot when things got nasty, these people burned their bedding and made new ones. Yeah, seems like 100,000 years ago, life on Earth was totally wild. Sure, microbes and amphibians were chillin' for billions of years before that, but things were way different back then. So, during a prehistoric trip, you could have bumped into one of the biggest mammoths ever. Yup, the Columbian mammoth was a beast. Standing at 13 feet tall and weighing over 10 tons, it had curved tusks that were even longer than its body, somewhere over 16 feet. These weren't like those woolly mammoths you see in movies with their thick brown fur. The Columbian mammoths didn't need that kind of coat, because they didn't live in the icy regions of Europe and North America. But don't let their lack of fur trick you. These creatures were massive, and could have been a real threat to humans who lived near them, even though they were plant eaters. Another beast you'd stay away from is Toxodon. This land animal had some seriously cool curved teeth that gave it its name. It looked like a rhino, but with some similarities to rodents too. The last one was spotted only 5,000 years ago, and that's pretty recent in the grand scheme of things. Charles Darwin even used the Toxodon as an example to explain evolution and anatomical differences. Some people think it might have been semi-aquatic, but its grass-eating habits suggest otherwise. Not only was the Earth full of cool animals, but it also had a diverse human population. There were all sorts of new species popping up left and right, and they were on the move, looking for a better place to call home than Africa's dry and dusty areas. One of those species was Homo floresiensis, aka the hobbits. These little guys were only about 3 feet tall and hunted for their food using stone tools. They were totally unknown until recently, when scientists found their remains in caves all over the world. Homo erectus were the first humans who actually looked like us. They were total trendsetters, standing upright and all. They were the first to explore outside of Africa and check out other continents. These guys were pretty smart too, making cool tools and even cooking their own food. But unfortunately, they got a little too comfortable and lazy. They didn't keep up with the changing climate and eventually went extinct. It's a shame, really, because while other humans were hustling to improve their tools and survive, Homo erectus just couldn't keep up with the times. Lesson learned: don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone. Homo sapien Neanderthals were basically our ancient cousins who lived in Europe and Asia. They were pretty smart and used fancy stone tools to hunt and survive. But let's not get too carried away with their intelligence, okay? The media likes to hype them up as geniuses, but there's not a ton of evidence to back that up. Modern people are the only non-extinct human species. You and I are part of the Homo sapiens sapiens subgroup that roamed the Earth 100,000 years ago, too. We were so smart that we even migrated out of Africa to Europe and Asia. Our intelligence was apparent from the very beginning. By the way, the era we're traveling in was called the Stone Age, as back then people learned how to tame stones. That was a tremendously large era that started over 2 million years ago, and it only finished in 3300 BCE. Let's dive into Plombos Cave. It's a super cool spot located in the Plombos Private Nature Reserve on the southern Cape Coast of South Africa. The cave may be small, only around 430 square feet, but it's got a big history. Early modern humans were all about Plombos Cave, visiting repeatedly between 100,000 to 70,000 years ago before a sand dune partially sealed the entrance. Above the sand dune, you'll find material from the later Stone Age. The coolest discovery? 2 pieces of ochre with geometric engravings that were found in 2002, marking one of the earliest signs of symbolic communication among early modern humans. It's about 75,000 years old. And it doesn't stop there. More engraved ochre pieces have been found in later excavations, proving that this type of communication has been around for ages. Plus, they found red lines of ochre drawn on a rock that dates back to 73,000 years ago, showing that painting was also happening back then. Also, in 2008, they discovered a 100,000-year-old ochre processing workshop with a couple of toolkits at Plumbos Cave. These toolkits consisted of 2 abalone shells containing an ochre mixture that was possibly used for painting or other purposes. Our technology has sure made a quantum jump since the first tool ever was invented. But just so you know, it all started with pointed stones in Plumbos Cave. Yeah, probably the reason why you have the internet today is because some prehistoric dude in Plumbos Cave learned how to use pressure flaking and managed to sharpen the very first stone ever. And there were some inventions in between that, but yeah.
Have you heard of Göbekli Tepe? It's an ancient site in Turkey that literally made historians rewrite history books. Over 11,000 years ago, a group of prehistoric humans crafted an enigmatic masterpiece that's even older than Stonehenge. Before its discovery, archaeologists believed that people didn't know about iron and weren't good at making pottery. They were sure that settled life only emerged with the need for agriculture. But Göbekli Tepe changed this belief. The place has revealed that it was the temple that paved the way for a settled life, not agriculture. Until this discovery, researchers believed that farming was the catalyst for sedentary living. Meet Professor Schmidt, the guy whose findings changed this theory. He managed to prove that hunter-gatherer communities laid the very foundations of this way of life. Back in the 1960s, other archaeologists visited the area, but they totally missed the mark. While surveying the region, they stumbled upon a hill with scattered limestone slabs and concluded it was just an old burial ground from medieval times. Little did they know that there was so much more to uncover. In 1994, Schmidt embarked on his own survey of prehistoric sites in the area. Surprise! He instantly realized he had discovered something truly extraordinary. Unlike the nearby flat and barren plateaus, Göbekli Tepe had a gently rounded top, rising 50 feet above the surrounding landscape. Funny enough, the translation of this place's name is Potbelly Hill. Schmidt was sure only humans could have made something like this. Those broken limestone pieces that were mistaken for gravestones turned out to be way more exciting. It was like stumbling upon a hidden treasure. The pieces took on a whole new meaning, and Schmidt with his team was about to dive into the secrets waiting beneath the surface. To their surprise, they found no traces of a settlement, no hearths for cooking, no houses, and none of those adorable clay figurines commonly found in nearby sites of similar age. However, they uncovered that those ancient people used tools like stone hammers. So, Schmidt and his team put their heads together and took a wild guess at the age of Göbekli Tepe's stone structures. Their estimation got backed up by some limited carbon dating done right at the site. The ancient vibes of this place were finally starting to make sense. It was like a puzzle slowly coming together. You may think that back then, people didn't have special tools to create something as cool as Göbekli Tepe. Not true. Turns out, these prehistoric folks used flint tools instead of fancy metal chisels. They were also skilled at chipping away softer limestone and crafting pillars right on the spot. Afterward, they carried the pillars a short distance to the summit and placed them upright. Once the stone rings were complete, they covered them with layers of dirt. Over time, they added new rings, and voila! You've got a cool hill to impress people in the future. During their first year of excavation, the team went through 15,000 pieces of animal bones from wild creatures. These people didn't have pet animals or grow their own food. They hunted wild animals for their meals. But things were about to change because the place had everything they needed to start farming. Scientists say they had wild sheep and wild grains that could be domesticated. And guess what? Just 20 miles away, geneticists found evidence of the world's oldest domesticated strains of wheat at a prehistoric village. These amazing findings have completely changed how we view civilization. In the past, experts believed that people needed to learn how to farm and settle in one place before they could build temples and develop complex societies. But guess what? Schmidt's research flips that idea on its head. He claims that the incredible effort put into constructing these astonishing structures actually set the stage for the development of advanced societies. It means that societal and cultural changes happened before agriculture. Schmidt has this fascinating hypothesis about Göbekli Tepe. He thinks it could have been a special burial site where people left their loved ones. And here's the twist. The burial site was adorned with fancy statues and symbols representing deities from the spiritual realm. The idea that Göbekli Tepe could have served as a sacred place adds another layer of complexity to the whole story. While the site's true purpose may remain elusive, Schmidt's insights invite us to consider the profound interplay between life and the afterlife, and the deep reverence ancient hunter-gatherer societies may have had for their departed ancestors. Now let's talk about the stars of the show, the mesmerizing T-shaped columns that dominate Göbekli Tepe. These mysterious structures range from 10 to 20 feet tall and most likely represent stylized human figures. But one figure stands out from the rest, the three-dimensional lion relief. This depiction really fires up our imagination. Why? Because it hints at the possibility that lions roamed Anatolia during the Neolithic period. These standing stones are arranged in circles and placed in rectangular pits. Each circle has a similar setup. Two big T-shaped pillars in the center, surrounded by slightly smaller ones facing inward. Talk about a stylish arrangement. These towering pillars reach a whopping 16 feet and weigh between 7 and 10 tons. Some pillars are plain and simple, while others are like works of art with intricate carvings. Foxes, scorpions, and vultures come to life, crawling and twisting on the pillars' sides. But it's not just animals depicted on these stones. Some pillars have abstract shapes representing humans, and even small carvings of clothing items. Some of them even have belts. Now, there's one pillar that stands out from the rest like a rock star. This super old stone pillar suggests that a comet crashed into Earth. It happened during a chilly period that lasted about 1,000 years. Previous studies examining Greenland ice cores hinted at this comet theory, but now the carvings at Göbekli Tepe prove it right. The carvings on the pillars are like a historical comic strip. They even show a headless human figure. Researchers fed the images into a computer and discovered their connections to constellations, indicating that this temple might have been an ancient observatory. It's like our ancestors were trying to document this cataclysmic event in their own unique way. Archaeologists have been excavating and researching Göbekli Tepe since the mid-1990s, peeling back layers of history and providing us with a deeper understanding of the intricate relationship between various elements. They have no plans to stop the whole process for another 150 years. Who knows what else they'll find? You see, Göbekli Tepe has been labeled purely as a ritual site with no signs of domestic activities. We were led to believe that the absence of water meant it couldn't support semi-sedentary communities. But scientists believe it's time to shake things up and approach Göbekli Tepe with fresh eyes. It's time to question what we believed before and use new evidence and different ways of thinking. Like, there might have been a group of people living in the area who didn't stay in one place all the time. They moved around a bit but still had their own civilization, living in the area semi-sedentarily. Göbekli Tepe is not just home to a single temple, but an astounding collection of over 20 ancient structures. As archaeologists delve into the depths of this wonder, they are unraveling its unique layout, featuring two prominent focal points at the heart of each establishment, complemented by smaller structures and dividing walls. What's even crazier is that in this area, there are over 200 obelisks, which are narrow tapering monuments.
Here's a young man in a business suit. He's got a secret. He's in the bathroom, standing in front of the mirror, washing his face with cold water to cheer up. There's no one else here besides him, but he's not alone. The guy looks nervous. He slaps his cheeks, looks in the mirror, and says, "Don't worry, we can deal with it. We've been going to this for so long, we will win." He said "we," not because he has a split personality. And no, he's not talking to someone else through a small microphone. He said "we" because he knows a secret. Technically, he's not all human, but a group of billions of living creatures. Him, you, and all the people on Earth aren't really who they think they are. Only 43% of your body is made up of human cells. The remaining 57% are microbes and bacteria. Now this guy is going on stage to tell us this secret. Get on the scales. See the number? Now subtract a little more than half from it. This is your actual weight. Everything else is microscopic organisms. It's hard to believe because, in this case, your body should constantly change its shape, disintegrating into tiny particles. You would see your skin pulsating and continually moving. Fortunately, this doesn't happen for two reasons. Firstly, microbes are tiny. Their movements aren't visible. Secondly, most of this microbial world is in a dark place we can't see. A place without access to oxygen. In our intestines. It's where billions of little creatures are roaming. Feeling kinda crowded, huh? Some of them appeared before we were born, but most were colonists who came with food and water. On your body's surface, all microbes come from the environment. Every corner of your skin is covered with microbes. No matter how you try, it's impossible to get rid of them. There are more microbes than human cells. Our genome consists of about 20,000 genes. The number of microbes genes in the human body is about 2 to 20,000 million. That means that technically, we're not people, but microbes. Fortunately, it's not so bad. The genome of microbes complements our own. Such a model of existence reveals many opportunities for medicine. The human microbiome includes bacteria, fungi, and other microorganisms, all of them divided into many species, and each type performs its own functions. Some microbes are responsible for vitamin extraction from food. Others help the breakdown of destructive substances. Another type helps your tummy digest food. A separate group regulates your immune system, protects it against ills, parasites, and viruses. Some control weight. Simply put, microbes make your life better, help your body function, and affect your health. There are microorganisms that provoke many diseases. They impair immunity or affect vital organs. Imagine you know exactly which bacteria are responsible for feeling unwell. Next, you find a way to rid yourself of them. It can be some pill with poison against those microbes. You drink it, and the cure erases all the harmful pests inside your body. A disease might appear because of the lack of beneficial microbes. This is one of the ways doctors heal many people in the world. Now let's say you've determined a group of microbes that help strengthen muscles. Then you find out which trace element helps these bacteria work faster and more efficiently. You add this vitamin to food or just get a pill containing 1 billion of these microbes. As a result, your muscles grow twice as fast. The presence of some microbes or the lack of others can show the state of your entire body. A sample of your microbes can indicate your level of health or the presence of some disease. Any person can improve their body not only with the help of genetic engineering, but with microbial medicine. Studying human microbes is cheaper, more efficient, and faster than expensive, complex gene modifications. This area is just beginning to develop all over the world, but there are already some discoveries. Previously, humanity thought microbes were enemies. We made up many ways to destroy bacteria and viruses. But along with the harmful germs, these cures get rid of the good ones. Now scientists understand that microbes can both take away and save lives, so they started large-scale research on this subject. Let's have a look at a big panda. This animal, with an ample supply of fat under its skin, is omnivorous. It rarely eats meat. Its diet mostly consists of berries and bamboo shoots. But in winter, there's none of this, so pandas feed on bamboo leaves. That food is low-calorie. There's almost no proteins in it. But still, pandas don't lose weight after a cold winter. Recently, scientists found out how pandas do that. It's all thanks to a unique microbiome. Every winter, a lot of unique bacteria are born in their intestines. These microbes extract and synthesize helpful substances from bamboo leaves better than others, and thus preserve the panda's weight. Scientists put these bacteria inside field mice. Small rodents began to gain weight much faster. Hamburgers, cakes, and other heavy foods contain calories and help develop colonies of microbes that contribute to weight. Millions of species of microbes have millions of functions. In theory, each of these functions can be used for the sake of humans. So, imagine you need to lose or gain weight, and you just add these microbes to your lunch. Do you want to sleep better or fight drowsiness? Drink microbes that will affect the production of sleep hormones. Do you want to strengthen the bone tissue? No problem! Bacteria are not only inside our bodies, they're everywhere. Part of the planet is made up of microbes. These tiny organisms are constantly multiplying. Look, there are 1 trillion of them on your keyboard. One bacterium increases in size and splits into 2 bacteria. After a few minutes, these 2 increase and divide again. 4 microorganisms appear. Each of them splits in 2. The colony of bacteria is rapidly growing. With such quick reproduction, one microbe can make 1 ton of offspring in just 24 hours. After 5 days, bacteria will fill all the seas and oceans. They will weigh more than the whole planet. Under ideal conditions, bacteria could take over the whole world. However, this will never happen. There are no such perfect conditions for uncontrolled bacterial growth. The speed they multiply at is equal to the speed of their destruction. Dryness, water, light, high temperature, gases, humidity, all these phenomena help control their population. At the same time, microbes are in charge of most of the chemical reactions on Earth. An old apple on the ground is rotting because of germs and bacteria. Mold forms on bread because of microorganisms. But they don't just exist and affect the condition of any material and other living creatures. An endless battle for survival continues in the world of microorganisms. Giant bacteria absorb smaller ones. Microbes with spikes defeat long microbes. There are also viruses that penetrate bacteria and infect them with their cells. A small ball with a virus can destroy an entire colony of microbes. Viruses multiply and take over more and more territories until they meet strong immune cells on their way. There are also creatures resembling robots. They look like diamonds with mechanical legs. Despite this unusual appearance, they're 100% natural. We call them bacteriophages. They have only one purpose: to destroy all bacteria. Bacteriophages are additional protection of the planet from uncontrolled reproduction of microbes. When some microorganisms multiply, they leave decay waste. This waste is harmful to humans. Bacteriophages fight these microbes and save our lives. The coolest thing is that these defenders don't seek to take over the planet. They only attack bacteria. Every second, billions of microbes battle with billions of bacteriophages on any surface. Sounds like a video game. The crystal-headed jumps on the bacterium and injects the genetic code inside it. This code has separate elements that connect to each other inside the microbe's body and becomes a new bacteriophage. Then it destroys the bacterium from the inside and goes for the next one. Look closely at your fingertip. There's a lot of life there. The strongest survive, the weak disappear. Wash it off, and new bacteria will come along with the water. Wipe your wet finger with a towel, and new germs will jump on you from there. And the battle will begin again. This is just the tip of your finger. Inside your body, some bacteria are fighting for your health against microbes that want to harm you. Some microbes in our intestine can be responsible for a good or bad mood. There are also parasitic bacteria that can affect our brain, the way we think, and our emotions. Some creatures control the behavior of animals and insects. Scientists constantly make discoveries in the world of microorganisms. So, bacteria are the rulers of our world. They appeared long before humans and the first animals, and most likely, they'll remain after us. Think about that. Okay, look at yourself in the mirror. Yeah, right in the eye. See that little fold of tissue in the inner corner of both of your eyes? Well, get ready for this. It was actually once a third eyelid or nictitating membrane. You can see it today in snakes or lizards, for example. The third eyelid was used for the same purpose as the other two, although it's unclear whether humans ever even had it fully grown. This membrane wasn't as thick as the two eyelids we have, and it could moisten the eye without obstructing the view. Right now, all we have left of it is this tiny fold in the corner of the eye, and most likely in the future we will lose it altogether. And maybe we'll finally stop waking up with that yucky crust that forms in our eyes overnight. Now, while you're still in front of the mirror, look lower. Lower, and lower still. Yeah, those are your toes. Say hello and goodbye. Scientists believe that, in some more or less distant future, we'll get rid of our toes completely. Our ancestors, the ancient primates, needed toes to climb trees more efficiently. They used both their hands and feet to grab tree branches. You can see it today in most monkeys and apes. They have longer and more flexible toes, along with flappier feet that allow them to get a hang on branches. Their feet mobility also lets them grab objects from the ground if necessary. For us humans, even lifting a pen we dropped on the floor with our toes is a complex task, but not for our primate relatives. Humans have evolved along a different route. We started walking upright and climbed down from trees, making rigid feet and shorter toes more of a necessity over time. Today, we still use our toes for balance when rolling from the balls of our feet to the tips of the toes, but our balance is now much more centered. It first moved towards our inner feet, which resulted in our pinky toes becoming so tiny, and the big toes, well, so big. As the balance moves away from the toes entirely, though, they're more likely to get fused together in the future. Now, turn around and look at your gorgeous behind. If you've ever fallen off a skateboard or slipped on an icy patch, you must remember what a terrible thing it is to hit that tailbone on a hard surface. Luckily for us, scientists predict it's going to go away pretty soon in the course of evolution. A tailbone is a feature that was left to us by our primate ancestors too. And yet again, they needed their tails to achieve more mobility among tree branches, using them to fling themselves from tree to tree. It's hard to say when humans drop the tail to never pick it back up, but facts are facts. The only thing we have reminding us of those glorious tree-jumping days is the pretty useless bone at the lower end of our backs. Okay, back to the face now. Open your mouth and say, "Ah." If you're a lucky individual to have no wisdom teeth, then you can be proud knowing that you're a product of evolution going strong. As you might know, teeth are the only part of the human body that doesn't repair itself. So if you lost all your teeth back in the dark times with no dentists around, the only choice you had was to eat liquid food. Not cool. Dentists believe that nature gave us wisdom teeth as a replacement for old, worn-out teeth we've had since childhood. That's why they grow so late in our lives. Today, though, with all the progress dentistry has gone through, we tend to keep all or most of our teeth intact until a very old age. And even if we lose some, we can always replace them with new ones. That makes wisdom teeth a vestigial thing. And they seem to understand that, since more and more people never have to go through the ordeal of teething as grown-ups. Speaking of teeth, our entire jaw has been changing for the past, 10,000 years, and is predicted to change even more quite soon. In fact, it's been the fastest changer of all our body parts. Back in the day, when early humans survived by hunting and gathering, they needed massive, powerful jaws and bigger teeth to chew through raw meat and grind plants. As they came to cooking and then farming, their food became less tough, and so their jaws became smaller to fit the current needs. As time went by, our jaws shrank more and more, and they're likely to continue doing so in the future. With lots of processed foods that don't need much chewing, humans of the future are probably going to have more delicate facial features with thin jaw lines and smooth cheekbones. Some body parts are not going away, but making a comeback instead. 100 years ago, fibula, a tiny bone in the back of the knee, was only present in around 11% of people, and scientists thought it would disappear entirely pretty soon. But, against all odds, the brave little bone has made it into the knees of a whopping 39% of modern people. It's still unknown why exactly the fabella returned, but the most popular opinion is that we've grown taller and heavier than our ancestors. That much is true. As our diet became better and more nutritious, we learned to live longer and grow taller. We're now probably at the peak of our evolutionary height. And the fabella might have appeared in our bodies to provide a smooth surface for the tendon behind the knee to slide on, reducing friction and lowering the chances of damage because of wear and tear. Speaking of becoming bigger, let's get you back to that mirror, shall we? Flex a little bit. Ooh, nice biceps there. But unfortunately, not as nice as your ancient ancestors were. Not everything about evolution is 100% good for us. It's just a set of features that adapted best. And that's the case with our muscles. They've grown smaller and weaker with time, especially in our upper bodies. In ancient times, humans needed big and strong muscles to do a lot of handiwork, from hunting and schlepping their catch home to crafting tools and building shelters. Later, it didn't grow easier, much the opposite. In fact, plowing fields and building complex structures required a lot of physical strength and endurance. But as the technological progress started booming, physical capabilities gave way to brain power. And machines began doing a lot of work for us, most of it even better than us. We shifted more towards sedentary lifestyle, spending more and more time in front of computers. And our muscles have been growing steadily smaller because we simply don't need them as much anymore. It's highly likely that as the progress goes further, we'll become much slenderer and have more trouble gaining muscle mass. Our brain is of particular interest because it's been changing in a kind of a strange pattern. Our distant ancestors had a rather small brain at first, but the close relatives of humans, the Neanderthals, obtained a larger brain than the average modern human has. In the course of evolution, human brain grew larger. But in the more recent centuries, it started shrinking, and no one knows exactly why. Some experts say it might have to do with the change of our lifestyle and social connections. Early humans, especially hunter-gatherers, had to remember every plant and animal they saw, their properties, and how to use this or that thing. They were more generalist, having to learn everything their parents knew and find out more on their own. The modern human is more specialized in a certain area, delving deeper into some narrow subject while relying on their peers for the rest. Where ancient humans worked in groups in which anyone could potentially replace anyone else, we gather in teams, where each member has their own specific task and is irreplaceable. Still, brain size doesn't seem to matter that much, because orcas and elephants, for example, have bigger brains than us, which doesn't make them more intelligent. Happier? I'm guessing yes. And if we venture further into the unknown, meaning millennia from today, we might even develop some pretty unbelievable traits. Some go as far as to say that if the tendency for the sea levels to rise persists, humans might adapt to living in water. We might evolve to have webbed hands and feet to swim better, and develop gills to be able to breathe underwater. Or, if we go into space and start colonizing other planets, we will inevitably have to adapt to their conditions. Mars, for instance, has lower gravity and a much colder climate. It will probably make humans taller and lighter, but also may cause them to grow much more body hair to keep warm. And planets with stronger gravity and higher temperatures will, on the contrary, turn humans into stocky, sturdy, and likely hairless creatures. The possibilities are endless. Hey, maybe due to social media, we'll just turn into little blobs with big eyes and thumbs and not much else. So much better for texting. Hope not. Okay, think about it. We are the only animals on the planet who have a chin. Just us humans. Primates don't have it, and even our close extinct relatives like Neanderthals never had it either. Not by the hair on their chinny-chin-chins. Scientists have a couple of theories on why people have chins. First, it could be there to help us chew food, because that extra bone might mitigate stressful mechanical actions like chewing. But if we really needed that kind of support while chewing, we'd probably have more bones on the inner side of the jaw, somewhere near the tongue instead of beneath the jaw. For example, chimpanzees have an additional bone in their lower jaw placed on the tongueward side, something we don't have. Second, we might have the chin to speak easier. Some scientists claim that extra bone below provides some kind of reinforcement. However, we don't use that much force when speaking. Well, some of us do. Third, some researchers say our chin could be something that measures attractiveness when we seek a partner. Hey, nobody can take it on the chin like us humans. Also, the chin could be a result of our skull getting smaller. This is why our mandibles are not as robust than those of our extinct relatives. As they developed, discovered fire, and started cooking their food, they no longer needed strong jaws because the food wasn't so difficult to chew anymore. Elephants have something similar to our chin, but their so-called chin is there because they have a large lower lip, plus a lack of lower teeth. It's not some type of bony protrusion that we have. So, chin up, kiddo! Stay on the bright side. Meanwhile, our cells are so small that if you could get 10,000 of them together, they could fit on the head of a pin. The human brain has an impressive memory capacity. The brain has around 100 billion neurons. You'd need more than 3,000 years to count all of them, so trust me. If we could store one memory on each neuron, our brain would eventually run out of space, and we'd have limited storage space, like on a USB flash drive or an iPod. So yes, it would be possible for our brain to be full. Not mine. Neurons are linked to each other. Each has 1,000 connections to others. That way our memory capacity is exponentially getting bigger. It's hard to measure it, but it could be millions of gigabytes. If our brain was a digital video recorder, it could record 3 million hours of your favorite shows, and you'd have to leave the television on for over 300 years to do that. Whenever we laugh, think, look at something, dream, move, or do some other activity with our body, small electrical and chemical signals run between neurons along those connections. Our brain is always active, and sometimes it's even more active when we sleep than when we're awake. By the way, neurons make and send more information than all the phones in the whole world. Just one neuron won't generate that much electricity, but all of them together produce enough of it to power a light bulb. Our brain is a wrinkly organ, but if you could open up your head, remove it, and smooth it out, it would lay down flat in the size of an average pillowcase. Whenever an insect lands on your leg, your skin's sensory neurons quickly send a message to your brain at an impressive speed, 150 miles per hour. The brain sends back a message for your leg to shake the insect off even faster, at around 200 miles per hour. Our heart beats more than 3 billion times in the average lifetime and pumps over 47 million gallons of blood. Humans have unique fingerprints. So do koalas, chimpanzees, and gorillas. Other than fingerprints, people have a unique tongue print too, and they have a chin. We are the only animals that sleep on their backs. Also, humans are the only creatures that can draw straight lines, and we have a chin. More than 50,000 of your body cells were replaced by new cells in just a few seconds while you were watching this part. Didn't you notice? Yes, our entire body regenerates. But teeth are the only part that can't heal themselves. Left-handed people mostly chew food on the left side of their mouth, while right-handed people do that on the right. And in each case, we move our chins. Our fingers are very sensitive, but lips are even hundreds of times more. Plenty of animals can move their ears to find a sound source around them, but most people can't move their ears at all. Your left lung is around 10% smaller than the right one, because it needs to allow some space for your heart. Also, it can fit in less air. Your lungs have 1,500 miles of airways and more than 300 million alveoli, which could cover approximately 1/4 of a tennis court. Lungs are the only organ in our body that can float on water. Toenails grow around 4 times slower than your fingernails. It happens because we do more things with our hands than our feet, so we cause more trauma to our fingernails. Muscle is a word that was originally a Latin term which means little mouse. When ancient Romans would flex their bicep muscles, it reminded them of a mouse. Heh, my biceps look like little hamsters. Our brain takes and uses more than a quarter of the total oxygen our body receives. Each of us has more microbes than there are stars in our galaxy, trillions and trillions of them. There are billions of bacteria only in our mouth, and over 2,300 types of bacteria in our belly button. Ew! But they're all so tiny that if you could put all the microbes from our body together, they'd weigh as much as your brain, around 3 pounds. There's a high possibility your right hand has different types of microbes than the left one. It happens because they cover our skin from head to toe, and their variety depends on our skin thickness, humidity, temperature, texture, and chemistry, which can change as we use our right and left hand in different ways. There are more microbes than our own human cells in our body, but no worries, they make things like the digestive, immune system, and our brain work properly. Sense of taste is about 10,000 times less sensitive than the sense of smell. The flavor is just a mix of smell and taste perception. Normally, we think we can sense taste, but smell is dominant when it comes to recognizing what we eat. Also, the sense of smell is related to our memories. Particularly, smells can almost immediately bring back memories and trigger some quite strong emotions. How about Grandma's chocolate chip cookies? Get equipped for any season with brand new Brightside merch. Click the link and grab your print. A normal heart rate of an average adult is 75 beats per minute. When you turn on your favorite song or simply enjoy listening to some music, the heartbeat syncs with the rhythm. Our eyes are compelling, and our vision is so strong we can see the light coming from a candle flame even when it's more than 1.7 miles away. On average, humans have so much fat in our body we could produce 7 bars of soap. Our nails and hair are made of keratin, a material we can find in certain body parts of some other animals. For instance, claws, hooves, horns, wool, fur, feathers, beaks, turtle shells, and porcupine quills. An average lifespan of an eyelash is around 150 days, and then it falls out. The hyoid bone, placed in our throat, is the only bone in our body not attached to other bones. It's also the only jointless bone in our body. Out of 206 bones in our body, 52 are in our feet, 28 in toes only. The smallest bone in our body, the stapes, is in the middle ear. It's only 1/10 of an inch long and is surrounded by other tiny bones inside the ear. They're all so small they could fit on a penny, but also very important, because without them, we wouldn't be able to hear. Our hair helps us hear. Not the one that grows on our head, but our cochlea has approximately 15,000 microscopic hair cells. They sense every movement that gets into the cochlea and catch, then carry the sound right to our auditory nerve. From there, vibrations and movements are sent to the brain, and then we can recognize what's that sound we heard. Our body is made of stardust. Plenty of elements in our body have come through a couple of supernovas. The first stars were just gassy lumps that were drawn together and, at some point, started the process of combustion. All this led to a nuclear reaction in its center. Stars that were right there after the Big Bang were over 50 times bigger than our Sun. There was a constant process of making the elements inside them, and those giant stars were burning their fuel faster. Most of the elements in the human body were formed in those stars over billions of years, even before the Big Bang happened. And yet, we humans stand alone because we have a chin. Ready for a shock? Only about 43% of you is actually you. The rest are your friendly neighbors, microscopic creatures that help you function properly. They mainly live in your gut, but also spread to other parts of your body and never leave it. Still, even though your own cells are fewer than microbial ones, there are, on average, about 100 trillion of them in you. If you take all the microbes dwelling within your body and count their genes, it'll be anywhere from 2 to 20 million genes and their combinations. Tomatoes have more genes than humans. Well, the part that's actually us, of course. This shouldn't concern you, though, because it's not the number of genes that matters, but the complexity of their connections. Our brain is actually pretty large, almost as large as a pillowcase. It's squeezed into a relatively small head just because it's very wrinkly. If you could spread it out, you'd see how brainy you are in reality. When you age, your brain is gradually reducing in size. By age 75, it's much smaller than at 30, and it starts shrinking by the age of 40. It happens in everyone and doesn't affect your mental strength in any way. Our brain can store only 7 bits in its short-term memory. Don't even try to compare your brain with a phone capacity, not even the one you had back in 2005. A mere byte is 8 bits. That's why you can't even learn a phone number by heart. Our short-term memory functions just like a chalkboard. You can get some info, but sooner or later you run out of space. Working memory is an essential thing that we need to perform almost any everyday activity, including basic conversations, navigating in the city, and even trying to copy the moves from a workout video. Our strongest and most emotional memories are usually fake. It's the way the central memory works. It gives us the confidence to believe everything we remember is real, even though we should be confident about fewer details. Your bones become more brittle with age as well, and your spine gets compressed. That's why older people often lose some of their height. In the same way, you're a bit taller in the morning than in the evening because your spinal column gets some rest while you're asleep. This effect is temporary, but the one that comes with age is, unfortunately, permanent. Our lifespan is programmed within our cells. They constantly renew and divide, but they have a sort of internal timer that stops at some point. Some cells also stop reproducing sooner than others. On average, cells cease dividing when we reach the age of 100. That means if we could find a way to trick our cells into turning off the timer, we could potentially live forever. Among mammals, only humans can always walk on 2 hind limbs and keep that posture for their entire lives. You might object that kangaroos and gorillas move in the same way, but kangaroos use their tail as a third leg, and gorillas use the help of their long arms to keep balance. Body fat isn't just a nuisance. It acts as insulation material, energy reserve, and shock absorber. Your body sends the most fat into your waist region because that's where your internal organs are. If something happens to you, this layer of fat might as well protect your vitals from irreparable damage. Your bones take part in metabolism too. Since they mostly consist of calcium, when there's not enough of this element in your blood, bones start shedding it into the bloodstream, balancing your body. And vice versa. When there's too much calcium in your blood, it goes into the bones to be stored for later. Your skull consists of 28 different bones, many of which are fused together to protect your brain. The mandible, or lower jaw, is the only skull bone that's only kept attached to your head with connective tissues and muscles. And the smallest bone in your whole body is inside your ear. It's called stapes, and it's no larger than a grain of rice. The only bone to have a sense of humor in your body is inside your upper arm. That's why it's called humerus. Okay, I made that one up. Move along. Some of the strongest muscles in your body aren't in your arms or legs. They're in your head. Masseter is the main muscle responsible for chewing, and it needs to be the strongest for you to eat normally. And you know those muscles that allow you to move your ears? Those are temporalis, located above your temples. They also help you to chew your food. We've got 2 really fast muscles. They control the eyelid closing. In fact, they're the fastest muscles in our body. Eyes are fragile and need protection. That's why, when a reflex is triggered, these muscles shut the eyes within less than 1/10 of a second. It's been believed for a long time that a person could distinguish more than 10,000 smells. A recent research showed that people were able to distinguish more than 1 trillion smells. We also remember them better than anything else, and smells can even evoke some distant memories. We recognize only purple-blue, green-yellow, and yellow-red colors. Everything else is a combination of these three. It's impossible to calculate how many of these combinations the human eye sees because every single person has slight vision differences, but it's about 1 million combinations on average. We feel about 80% of the taste of any food thanks to the nose and its ability to recognize odors. If you hold your nose while eating, you will taste almost nothing. You might have a chocolate bar or smoked fish in your mouth. There will be no difference for you. Your sense of smell turns completely off while you're asleep. Your brain just doesn't register any smells. So if you've fallen asleep and then something starts stinking in your house, you won't be bothered in the least. Rover, you bad boy! Your nose doesn't just help you breathe and catch odors, it filters the air for sensitive throats and lungs. If we inhale dry air, the nose moistens it, cools it, and heats it if it's necessary. Also, the nose cleans the air from dirt. We can accidentally digest small objects, such as plastic items, glass, coins, and many other small objects. They'll make their way through the digestive tract within 48 hours. And there's even a man who managed to eat a whole airplane. It took him years, though, but little by little, he finished his metal meal with no trouble at all. When asked if the plane was staying there forever, the guy replied, "No, just passing through." Yeah, I made that up. Speaking of meals, you feel sleepy after a hearty lunch or dinner because of your basic instincts. Your brain thinks, and rightfully so, that when you eat, you're safe. And if you're safe, you can lie down and have some rest before going back to the world so full of dangers. Every person has their unique smell that can't be confused with anyone else's. Still, if you have an identical twin, you will both have the same smell. Now, our brain perceives giving presents as a more positive act than receiving them. Humans are social creatures. That's why, when we do something good for others, we feel good ourselves. The brain gives us a reward for acting this way in the form of oxytocin, the happiness hormone. Our eyes are powerful tools, much more so than any camera invented to this day. But still, unfortunately, they can't see the glow coming from our bodies. Yep, we're bioluminescent, just like some deep-sea creatures. The only difference is that our glow is so weak that only very sensitive capturing equipment can actually see it. Oops, time's up, gotta glow.